Welcome to Cordkillers Reckoning. The world of entertainment is turned upside down, and we're just trying to find out how to watch what we want, when we want, whenever we want. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian, what did I just say?
You just said we're going to watch what we want, when we want, on whatever dang device we please.
What we want, where we want, whenever we want. That's what I'm trying to say.
What, when, and on whatever device we please. And normally, oh man, I'm liking the trend of having more guests join us. More guests all the time, Tom. If only we had a guest right now.
Look below you in the video. It's Andy Beach, everybody.
Oh! Hi. I can be a guest. Can I be a guest?
Please
yes,
do.
You can. Be our guest.
I love that.
It's a little embarrassing, though, Andy. I forgot a main story. Could you provide one for us?
I think I can help there.
That's fantastic.
I think I can do it.
All right. Well, then we're going to go right to the supply run.
Supply run, supply run, supply run.
If you don't know Andy Beach already, he's been on our show before. He is a long-running professional in media, in streaming, in technology, good friend of ours. Very happy that you are willing to join us for our chicanery again. But you have started a really good Substack. Before we get into the main topic, tell people about what you've got going on.
Yep. So I left Microsoft in January and have been loving being unshackled. I've been writing, I had a running list in a notebook, my version of Brian's RAM that he has going. And it was like all the things Microsoft wouldn't let me write about. And that's just been the main thing that I've been going through. And just trends that I see and the pieces. I feel like I've worked on a lot of different pieces of the media supply chain at this point. So I'm just digging, particularly right now, the nexus, the influx of AI into media and how it's changing it. And everybody has a different opinion, and so I'm happily giving mine. And the piece I sent over to you guys that I think we're going to talk about the most was the one that seemed the right, which was really what is going on with AI on the streaming side of the business.
Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, it's abeach, ABEACH.substack.com. And the piece that you sent over to us was so good. I know you gave us a free preview, but I immediately subscribed because I'm like, this crystallized something that my head had been spinning around for a while.
Yeah, no, it was a fun piece to write, and I can't take credit for the data that's there. There's a system integrator in the business that's well known out of Europe called Quest. It's very funnily spelled though, QVEST. And from where they sit, they do a lot of work in that sort of supply chain area, connecting production into distribution. And so they're really well suited to also do research in this space. And they had done analysis of what's going on in streaming at a global level, like how it's impacting things in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Asia. And they culminated it into a series of different views of what is likely. And I just began expanding upon that on sort of like what I sort of saw each of those scenarios looking like for us as sort of North American streamers.
So you've got 4 possible scenarios for the future of streaming TV, and you will recognize things that Brian and I have talked about in what Andy's going to say. But I think these are really good categories. Let's just have you take us through all 4. Let's start with the big tech total domination one.
Yeah, so I think the big one, and I think we all feel and recognize this one, would be big tech just coming in and dominating because they've become the infrastructure for so many of these streaming places. It sort of probably even feels a bit like the early days of Netflix and YouTube for that. But it's really them coming in and each having their own platform and being that primary place of choice for what we do, because they already have a lot of users. And this is yet another way, it's a service way that they can pull in more users or keep people glued and attracted to the areas that they do. So for me, I mean, for this one, it was really like, it's a great Apple scenario. Like anytime we talk about, there's always a little bit of buzz out there of like, oh, Apple could just go buy Disney tomorrow if they wanted. And this is exactly the kind of scenario that would play out if we saw that happen.
So you're talking about not Peacock being a platform, but Apple, Amazon, Google being the platforms.
Exactly. And I would even extend, Meta into that world as well. Very, very much a player in this space as well. Maybe even someone like a TikTok comes in and is a slightly different play on it. It depends, again, depending on what regulations go on around them, which is an excellent segue into item number 2 on my list, which was really around like big regulation coming in and deciding to break this up. If they see if the particularly, and I think we would have said before this year, maybe the US government was going to get in on this regulation act, but I think the reality is we see more regulatory sanctions and actions coming out in Europe around streaming platforms right now. So it would probably be a trend that pushed from there and then came our direction. But this would be them basically putting a foot down and saying you can't be both the platform and have that business. You have to have some separation between the two. And if we were to see that happen, we would probably see, and I refer to it as sort of cable 2.0 in the piece, but it would be that reconvergence of sort of the multi-vendor paid distribution pieces that are out there. And so we would have a platform that was decoupled from the technology stack, but what had some sort of aggregation of a lot of different types of content that were coming in to service a wide range of people. So you get that sort of happy, mushy middle of content that you're always going to be able to go on and find a channel or a subject of something that is out there.
So it's kind of to me, it sounded like the analog of Europe requiring Apple to allow third-party app stores, but for streaming services. Like you're not allowed to dominate a space. Okay, so we have big tech total domination. And then your second scenario is some kind of regulatory pushback that keeps that from being domination. Let's get to the last two.
Yeah, so total fragmentation or hyper specialization would be a scenario where maybe there's still some influence coming in from regulatory that's stopping the tech platform from just owning it all. But we go out and we just have a million niche players. We're sort of actually coming out of a mini version of this right now, where we had, I think there were 18 or 20 different OTT services out there that you could subscribe to, and we see them slowly collapsing in on each other at the moment. But you could have hyper specialized pieces. I mean, there's a billiards TV streaming service out there today. If you're a fan of billiards and you want to pay to watch it, there's a place to go watch it. There's a pickleball channel. If you want to go watch pickleball, you can do it. So it would be more of that. People having a blueprint, the ability to white label a service, show up with content, build an audience, and then stream the content that they want, but knowing that they're going to get a very niche audience. And the platforms don't love that, and even the MVPDs don't love that, because that's not how you go build a huge scalable business. It's how you keep a small mom and pop shop style place where you're servicing your audience, but your audience is going to be ultimately narrow if you compare it to the rest of the world.
So, and that's kind of a bigger, like you said, a bigger version of where we're at. So it would almost be turning backwards to do that. Yeah. I've noticed that we went from big tech domination to like, maybe there's some regulations that stop that from being totally dominant to like total fragmentation. Where do we have left to go then? How is there a fourth one?
The fourth one is it seems similar to the first, but it is different and unique, and it's something that is caught on way more in Asia than it has in Europe or in North America, and that is the super app. And a super app is really a platform, usually not a tech platform. It's usually someone in like a telco or a networking space that owns the sort of the relationship to the end user through their phone or their broadband connections or both. And they're bundling, grocery shopping and travel purchases and streaming all into a single app, so that you're doing your banking, you're doing your clothes purchases, your grocery purchases, and you're watching your TV all from this single app. And that's taken off in countries like India, Singapore has versions of it. Indonesia has versions of it. So it's caught on there in particular, and I think it's in many ways it's driven in cultures that are very heavy on mobile device usage. Not to say that the U.S. isn't, but we're not where other cultures are for that. We're still very much one that likes the sort of the lean back TV experience at the end of the day. So connected TVs are extremely popular here. They're becoming very popular in Europe as well. So it feels more likely that that's something that happens and remains in Asia. I feel like it's unlikely that regulatory probably lets someone push that many services together and own that broad of a footprint across the different industry slices. But who's to say?
So
I guess
when you're talking about the mega app option in a particular country, is it one app that tends to dominate, or are there Coke and Pepsi style differentiations?
There's almost always like one big one that has like the main footprint, but there might be a smaller one that's got a narrower slice of services. But it's almost always the Mr. Pibb, or probably even probably more like the Sam's Cola version of services that they can offer. So
there's also a little bit of overlap where like Kakao Talk is available, or Kakao services are available across Asia, but they're most popular in Korea. Line available in multiple countries, most popular in Japan, that kind of thing too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And they actually, it looks like in the little bit that I've worked in businesses with that have a super app concept, they will partner if they have a footprint across a broad set of countries in Asia. They will partner with several local services to onboard them as their version of a streaming application for there, or the travel option for there, so that you still have like some brand loyalty to what's going on, but you're doing it within this area where they've already got your credit card or your banking details because they're probably your banking institution.
Yeah.
And they've got your mobile accounts and your 5G connection to the world. And so they're just bringing you everything else to keep you in their experience and in their house constantly.
So one scenario I don't see outlined here, and maybe this is me, putting on my misty-eyed libertarian hat, but I feel like there's a possibility of sort of a I don't know. I guess I'll dub it the invisible border scenario, where you're traveling from provider to provider, but you don't even know it. You don't even see it. And there's a little bit of that. For example, there's a lot of services now that the moment I show up at their doorstep, I just look to see how I can authenticate. And I see Google and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll authenticate with Google or X or whatever, to where you have a passport. And as long as they accept it, maybe you tie in, your bank with that authentication and your other thing with another authentication, so that from the customer's perspective, it's as though everything is just one big happy family, when in fact, behind the scenes, everything is incredibly siloed precisely. How might that kind of scenario factor in?
That would probably end up being something that emerged in the regulatory scenario if we sort of went back to like a cable 2.0, because I think the reality is the cable services are getting out of the infrastructure business of streaming. I mean, we saw that Comcast and Charter did a joint venture where they moved their operations sort of into a place together that they could mutually share. And so I think they would probably be up for partnering with big tech to be the infrastructure, or maybe the identity and authentication, but then they're bringing their own flavors of services that they bundle together and then make present across whatever device we want to watch. Because that to me, there were two things that sort of were death knells to the traditional cable. One was the fact that it was highly tied to your home, and the fact that they owned the footprint all the way to the house, and they always struggled to do a good job of bringing it to the open internet. And then the other part was the customer service piece of it, and the contracting, which was just onerous there at the end stages. And so I think if they could buy step pieces of that infrastructure, but still bring together a broad range of content, we'd probably authenticate with a Google or an Apple to go watch across those provider places, and then they just cut the authenticator in on some piece of the deal.
Yeah, and that becomes part of the big tech domination, if I'm reading you right, where they are the platform.
They would be the platform.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be the platform in any of these scenarios. The question is, do they get to go make the rights and deals for what's being watched? In other words, do they have to go keep buying like movie studios and sports rights? Or are they letting a Charter type company or a Comcast type company do that? And then they're just the engine that's pumping and delivering all of that stuff out for them.
Yeah. And it sounds like you think there might need to be regulatory pushback for that scenario to play out, that it might not play out if left to its own devices.
Surely would. Yeah. I mean, it really would probably take something. And again, I think it's probably going to be Europe that drives this, in part because I think they have stronger, the European Broadcasting Union has an incredible strong sort of footprint in creating standards and regulations around what must be covered as a broadcaster. And I think if they could bring things like that into a future so that we don't lose, your local news coverage or your local sports coverage or the pieces that make it interesting, we then sort of avoid the pitfalls that radio had in the States when we lost all of our local radio stations and it just went to sort of this clear channel that was the same everywhere.
You know, what's interesting about these 4 scenarios is that they apply at multiple marketplaces at the exact same time. You've got the hardware stack where you could compete on what device you're using, whether it's mobile, whether it's a big screen in the living room. Then you got the brands, and then you've got the ecosystem level on there. Then you've got the where do you go to see the menu of things level of the over-the-top services. But on top of that, you have strange exceptions like the ability to buy Amazon Prime through your Apple TV or the ability to buy Apple TV originals through Amazon Prime. I don't know where we're at on any of that, but and then on top of that, you have brands that, for example, HBO and Max, that their value is in lending their halo and their production budget and their flavor. However, there's a lot of folks there's a lot of programs. I don't know what network that they're on. I just know that I have them because I valued the show. And then beyond that, you've got within that show, you've got the value of the persons who are the brand value of the showrunners behind each of them.
Right.
And all of them are playing different levels of this 4-dimensional chess with these 4 different outcomes all at the same time.
Well, you kind of bring up a super interesting point there, and I feel like it's definitely not covered in this, and it's a piece I have a note to go write something about later. But like we have fundamentally broken content discoverability, and we're not doing anything particularly to fix it yet, because it's very hard to know where a thing lives, how to go find it, and it's very easy to sometimes forget things exist. There are whole shows that we, for whatever reason, stepped away from, and months later, I'll come back and it's like, oh, we never finished that season of this thing because we stopped watching that application and I forgot it existed for a period of time. So we aside from all of these scenarios, we got to do something to fix content discoverability. And I think content management on a personal level, like how you as an individual manage what you watch so that you're not carrying it around in your head or a notebook.
What that solution looks like kind of depends on which one of these scenarios plays out. Do you have a favorite?
Ooh, do I have a favorite? I don't know that I have a favorite. I guess if I had to pick one, I probably lean towards number 2, that notion of there being a little bit of separation between the technology stack and the people providing the content, because I think that builds a heavy or sort of a healthy push-pull for what they can go do. And it decouples a little bit of sort of the technology requirements from that the content distributors had to have in the past from what they're doing. So I feel like that's probably, to me, it's probably the most likely. But even then, I mean, I put sort of my percentage bet against it, and I still only put that one at like a 40% likelihood. The reality is it's probably, we end up with 2 or 3 of these, and it's more a matter of like how much of each one we get. And it probably depends on where in the world you are. Like I said, I think Asia will probably have super apps for the foreseeable future. I don't know what it looks like in America. I'm hoping it's probably more number 2.
Yeah,
the traditional media combined with the big
Yeah.
tech stack. Yeah.
it is interesting to think of these, four poles as kind of platonic ideals or these archetypes of what might be. But the truth is, and I think we all agree on this, is that everything is slider bars in between. If these are in the EQ meter, you can boost one.
Yeah.
And
Do
we
you like
watch
a
it happen
wavy
in the news all
one,
the
or do you like
time.
them alternating up and down, more bass? Like, yeah, exactly. I tend to think that we are going to have the big platform push, but with a healthy dose of content agnosticism. In other words, like if it's Apple, Amazon, and Google, let's just say, are your big platforms, you will be able to get most of everything on each one of them with their own special spicy sauce, right? So Google will give you YouTube Premium for free if you're using theirs. Amazon will have Amazon Prime Video if you're using theirs. Apple will have Apple TV Plus if you're using theirs. But we already have a situation where you can get Apple TV on the Google platform, you can get Amazon Prime on the Apple platform. So there might be more availability than you think. And if that's the case, I kind of feel like that ends up being the winner. If they change tactics and say, no, we have pulled Prime Video from Apple TV, and they start consolidating, that's when you test the regulatory pushback.
Right.
How does that play?
I think there's a high likelihood, and I think that was probably my number 2 in the list. And if you think about it, that's probably exactly what sort of mid 20th century broadcast TV was like. If you think about it, there were like the 3 big stations.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here is, in a tech perspective, having 3 big channels. Those channels just happen to be Apple, Google, and somebody else that's putting content out there.
Yeah. And you could get most of unlike 3 big channels, which all had different programming, you would be able to get most of the same content on all of these because they would allow you to plug in everything, is what I'm guessing. I wonder where Netflix sits in that, because they don't like playing in these platform add-on. They like being an add-on on Verizon. They like to be an add-on on T-Mobile. They don't like to be an add-on to Amazon, Apple, and Google.
Well, and we've talked about this before. If past performance is any indicator, I think Netflix is continuing to play from HBO's playbook. Whenever it comes to, like, they kept on saying it's not TV, it's HBO. And HBO comfortably occupied that niche of, like, whatever it is, it's definitely more than TV, but you can't see it in the movie theaters. And I think Netflix likes being kind of the standalone wizard in that environment.
Do you ever see Netflix becoming a platform where they say, yes, you can get Netflix and add on Max?
I think that an early indicator of that being possible is if Netflix begins to gain a positive reputation in the game space, which we are seeing it actively dip a toe into, but that is going to be a good reflection about whether or not they can get away with making people think of themselves as a vital service.
I think it's tough I'm not sure if I see a world where they have sort of the channels option of adding on Max or something else in their platform. But I definitely see a world where they're more aggressively partnering and platforms are opening up and giving them content to license for the Netflix experience. I do think they're going to keep going down a path with their live and live linear stuff that they're doing. So the fast channel stuff that sort of help buoy the subscription pieces and keep them from keeping that from eroding. And it does feel like they're getting their feet under themselves for live productions for sports and concerts and other events. So I feel like we're going to continue seeing more and more of that. The question is, like, when do we start seeing things like news from them? Is there a news version that comes to Netflix? Because if that starts happening, they really are becoming like the 4th channel. They're going to become the Fox of the other broadcasters.
And it does seem like they've been making noises about wanting to be not so much HBO anymore, but to be all of television. Like we should be mainstream television, a broadcast channel a la Fox, CBS, ABC.
I mean, they have incredible subscribership, and I think the only way that you find a way to grow that is to go find the other types of content or other packaging of the same content that people are going to want to participate in and get those, the last few people. I want there to be a whole documentary about the last person in the world to subscribe to Netflix.
I love that idea. Actually, that's great. Everybody thinks Warner Brothers Discovery is going to sell CNN. I am less convinced than others. I feel like they need news unless they sell Warner Brothers Discovery entirely to somebody who doesn't want CNN. And then in the course of that deal, maybe they spin CNN off to somebody else. But I kind of feel like they want to keep a news outlet around. However, if I'm wrong and they wanted to sell CNN, Netflix buying CNN would be interesting.
That would be super interesting, but I tend to agree. I feel like they're going to hang on to that for as long as they can. It was not part of the things that got bundled into the holding company that they built, similar to Spinco.
Yeah. So
it feels like it's probably going to stick around, and there's other pieces of the business that go away quicker.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you're like, wait a minute, I have more questions. You need to go subscribe to Andy's Substack because he's got a lot going on.
Your free trial of Andy Beach has expired.
And in fact, I actually have a few free subscriptions to Andy's Substack, which he gets money for, even if I give them to you for free. So hit me up. TomMerritt@gmail.com. And first few people who ask, I'll pass along one of those.
And I'm still getting my legs under myself for how I'm going to structure it, but I'm very much trying to do sort of one deep analysis a week, but then also have sort of key takeaways of everything that I'm seeing. Just yesterday, I posted one that was sort of the last 72 or 96 hours of AI and media technology news that seem to be surfacing on multiple places. If I see it in more than one spot, I tend to feel like there's probably something there that I should chime in on.
abeach.substack.com. I just tried to save you money and get you Andy's Substack. So now you have extra money to spend on our Patreon.
Yeah. Well, and is it really spending, or is it more like, finally paying your dues? I watched when I was a kid, I saw Big Trouble in Little China. And I remember the opening monologue where Jack Burton was talking to anybody who would listen to him on a CB radio. And he said, when the man asks you, have you paid your dues? You say, yes, sir, the check is in the mail. Now, a lot of y'all ain't paid your dues. So why don't you head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers. Don't worry. You're going to get the smug satisfaction of keeping us loud, live, and independent. But more importantly, you're going to get exclusive access to our After Talk segment and early access to the full experience.
Forget it, Brian. Well, that's a different China movie. Never mind.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the search party. So I know, Brian, have you caught up on White Lotus, or are you still catching up?
No. Well, as a matter of fact, we finished season 1. We're midway through season 2. And my hope is that we'll get caught up so that we can enjoy the end of season 3 with everyone else.
Andy, are you watching White Lotus?
Love it. Totally caught up.
Okay. So you saw the scene with the snakes in the current season. Walton Goggins apparently got bit during that scene, not as part of the plot, as part of the actual shooting. He got bit by a snake. He is apparently very afraid of snakes, and said in an interview, I wish I could have been cool, but instead I yelled, oh my God, I've been bit by a snake. He still, I have to say, slapped some Neosporin on it and kept shooting. And it was only the next day that the producers stopped by his room and were like, you should probably go to the hospital and get that looked at just to be safe.
So I'm going to assume it was a non-venomous snake.
It was a non-venomous snake. Correct. Yeah. But I thought that was a very Walton Goggins story. Trailer for The Last of Us Season 2 is out 5 years after the events of Season 1. We're getting Season 2. Second season of Last of Us premieres on April 13th, 2025 on HBO and Max. we always have to check in on Brian, the super fan of the video games upon which this season is based. Did you watch the trailer?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't, and I question my moral commitment to watching it, because obviously I'm in, and I don't know that I would have anything. So I'm going to give you something else. I did watch instead another advertisement for The Last of Us. It was all of the posters around South by Southwest where some dude's wearing my jacket. I don't understand. The likeness is uncanny. It's very bizarre.
That's you. Yeah. Wait, are you on the poster?
It looks like it to me, man. I can go get my BB gun and walk around.
Andy, are you a Last of Us fan?
Huge Last of Us fan. Brian, my 14-year-old daughter, Davy, has started playing the game from the beginning. And so I have appointment viewing where I get to, on the weekend, spend 2 to 3 hours watching her work her way through it. And,
that's great.
We're all anticipating and waiting on season 2. Can't wait. I have one other, and I know I don't want to take this too far, but I have a Pedro Pascal story, which was years ago when I lived in Brooklyn. My wife went knitting every weekend at this yarn shop. I would sit in the coffee shop and talk to the barista, and he would make me way too many coffees. Years later, I learned that the guy they called Hot Pedro was Pedro Pascal. He had just graduated from NYU, and he was my barista
That's amazing.
In Columbia Heights, Brooklyn.
It is with great shame that I think back on the first time he popped on our radar was when we were watching Narcos, Tom, and I kept not being able to access Pedro Pascal's name, so I just kept calling him Javier Bardem. Whoops.
Apologies to Pedro Pascal. Continue. No, I'm excited about this too. Also, just today, Max released a trailer for the 4th season of Hacks. That is coming back. They are going to still do the thing they did last time, which is release 2 episodes at a time. So you get the first 2 episodes on April 10th. But it is also an HBO release schedule this time, even though it's a Max show. So you don't get it until 6 p.m. Pacific on April 10th. Even though it's not actually airing anywhere, it's got a time that it's releasing.
You know, that's one of the aspects. You know, we've talked about the HBO brand and it being dinged all around the place. HBO Go, HBO Now, HBO Max, HBO East, HBO West, you name it. HBO After Dark, whatever. Yeah. But one of the moves that I don't think we discussed is. I have been worried on their behalf for brand dilution with a lot of garbage being associated with HBO, but this was always, like you said, a Max original. So apparently that knife cuts both ways because they're able to say, oh, is this good? Is it prestige? Yeah, it's pretty much HBO-ish.
Yeah, why not? And it's certainly of the quality for that. The trailer is all about the dispute between our 2 main characters, which makes me wonder what they're hiding. Like, that can't be the entire season.
Well, and that's certainly something that they set up on there. But because this is where we're gonna see the adventure of her going back to Hollywood with the comeback.
She's doing her late night show. Although the trailer has a bunch of scenes in Vegas, so I'm guessing we're doing a lot of traveling back and forth for shoots and spending the weekends in Vegas, or maybe doing some engagements in Vegas. Maybe special late night series from Vegas because late night shows go on the road sometime. Did you watch Hacks, Andy?
I followed it. I will have to say of any of the ones we've talked about, like I'm still on this one, but I feel like I've grown a little more detached from it. Not like the others are like appointments. Like I'm waiting for those to come out so I can watch it. This one, I'll probably just wait till they're all out, particularly since they're sort of dropping them 2 at a time. Yeah. I personally don't love that either because it feels like they're just trying to dump them on us in a pattern. I'd love there to be a reason there were 2 episodes at a time, like they connected to each other. And I just don't feel it with anything I've seen that with so far. So I'll see it. I'm just not in a rush to see it.
Gotcha. Keanu Reeves apparently is the voice of the puppet video in the first episode of season 2 of Severance. And Ben Stiller said that Keanu Reeves was his second choice for that voice. The first person he tried to get was President Obama, who apparently wrote back, "Hey, Ben, big fan of the show. Love season 1. Can't wait for season 2. Don't think I have time in my schedule to make this happen." So we did not get Barack Obama's voice in Severance this year.
Man, I'll tell you what, dude, friggin' shoot for the stars.
For real.
Worst case, you end up with the moon.
Yeah, indeed.
I think of Keanu Reeves as a national treasure, but I mean, Obama would have been an amazing get.
The final season of You comes to Netflix on April 24th. I have never watched You. It is widely loved, though, and it has had kind of an inconsistent seasonal release schedule with sometimes multiple years between seasons. So people are very excited about this coming back.
Yeah. I take it from our stunned silence that none of us have been watching You.
Okay.
I will say I actually have seen the first 2 seasons. And again, this is, I think, kind of one that suffered from there wasn't a new one. And by the time it came back around, we forgot it existed. And so we just never picked it back up.
Yeah.
But the first two seasons that we watched were pretty great and pretty compelling. I mean, it's all around a serial killer. And so it's got a lot of dark elements and moments, but it always leaves you trying to second guess, and you're almost always wrong where it's going. So I enjoyed it, but I think it suffered from a discovery problem.
Yeah. And Netflix could have thrust it in front of you to the point where you would not be able to avoid it, but apparently they did not. And I don't think you're alone in that. All right, let's move on to the buried treasure.
Most people want to know why they suddenly got rich.
Buried treasure.
So the buried treasure segment is where we all talk about something that you might not have discovered. We're trying to solve that discovery problem for you by telling you stuff that we're watching that maybe you didn't know about. And Andy, we'll start with you. You've got a good one that I don't think Brian and I, either one, knew existed.
It got advertised to me a couple of times on Netflix. It's a 4-part miniseries called Toxic Town, and it's a true story of the town of Corby in the UK that suffered. It had a steel plant that sort of made it famous originally. When they tore that down, there was a lot of toxic waste in the land. It wasn't treated correctly, and there were a lot of birth defects and deformities. And this is the real life story that's brought in miniseries form to air. What I found fascinating was there were so many British actors that I recognized in it. Jodie Whittaker, there's a doctor in it, first of all. So that right there had me hooked. But there's Brendan Coyle, Robert Carlyle, Amy Lou Wood, all of these people, and it plays really great. It also, I thought, did an amazing job of recreating the 90s. Like, it felt very 90s when it starts, and even though it's only 4 episodes, it really the story folds out over a number of years. I believe it's like 13 or 14 years total that takes place in those 4 episodes, and it does a great job of sort of consistently moving you through that time period. So it's a low commitment. It's 4 episodes. I encourage everybody to go watch this, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it.
That sounds fantastic. And reminds me a little bit of the most recent episode of Severance for some reason. But yeah, so that's on Netflix, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's on Netflix, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I believe it's a Netflix original, or it's a joint with one of the British broadcasters.
Gotcha. Brian, did you watch any historical reenactments recently?
Yeah, dude. So I started watching the Righteous Gemstones. Did you start season 4?
I did. Yeah. No, I watched it yesterday.
Okay. Wait, well, you're saying historical reenactments, but this was a period piece, right?
Yes, within the show, it is a period piece because we're telling the story of the ancestors of the gemstones we know.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. I just want to make sure, like,
the entire time I was watching it, I was like, I wonder which reenactors they got from Civil War reenactments.
Well, what's funny is they put some of that footage in the trailer for this season, and I remember reading, they're going to do a whole Civil War reenactment thing, and instead they just have the first episode as a standalone thing set during the Civil War.
During the actual.
Now that you are mentioning it, I was actually spending last night wondering, why are they bothering to do this? And the answer now is obvious. Clearly, this is going to pay off with some kind of Civil War reenactment thing.
Yep. No, absolutely what it's going to be. It was a little weird.
It was fine.
to go back in time for the entire episode. I kept waiting for the flash forward to be like, oh, and now we're going to shed light on it. But it was an entire story set back then. And like you say, it was fine.
It was a bold move. Essentially, in production with Mono Rogue, we would call certain episodes vegetables. You know, sometimes like, this is vegetables. You got to eat your vegetables. This is all part of it. A balanced meal can't be candy. So it was a bold play, the kind of play that you get to have when you're a beloved franchise entering your last season, that you could be like, you know what? Vegetables. You're going to get an unironic redemption tale of a scoundrel who is saved by God, literally and figuratively, and takes the gospel and brings it. And one thing, by virtue of eating those vegetables that we're left with, is now I genuinely have a question in my mind of like, Gemstone was the name of the scoundrel, and he presumably lives out the rest of his life under the pious name of the minister who got killed. So I have to, like, that's a pretty good question that I want to see how that unravels or how that thread goes.
It's a buttery, well-seasoned vegetable, I will say. Andy, do you watch Righteous Gemstones?
I mean, love it. Have rewatched it multiple times.
Do you watch it religiously?
Oh, it is my religion, if I'm honest. And there is always like that one episode that they have per season that is like a historical piece where they sort of go back in time, and they've used it before as like an interlude. And this title literally was prelude. And so to me, the only awkward part was the fact that we jumped right into the season with the backstory. I almost wish we had started in the future and then this had been the second episode.
Yeah. No, I think I'm with you there. Like I kept waiting to see the familiar stuff. I'll get over it as soon as we see the familiar stuff.
I did spend a lot of time going, man, how did they find somebody that looked like Bradley Cooper? And then I was like, oh, they just got Bradley Cooper. Of course they did.
My buried treasure for today is a Chinese period drama on Vicky. This is set in the Song Dynasty, so it's kind of Middle Ages, called The Double. And it is about a woman who at the very beginning, at the very first episode, the opening scene, has been drugged and framed to commit adultery. So she hasn't committed adultery, but she wakes up and everyone has discovered her in bed with a topless man who is not her husband. She gets driven out because of the shame of that in that time period. And then her husband assassinates her and buries her. That's like the first 10 minutes of this. The rest of the story is her surviving, digging herself out of her grave, and going on a journey of revenge. She switches identities with someone, gets back into society, confronts her husband, who's like, I killed you. And she's like, I'm not her. I don't know what you're talking about. And so you get an entire revenge plot to have her, find out who set her up, why her husband killed her, and take revenge on everybody. It's a really good show. And a lot of times these dramas are really good until the last couple episodes, and then they sort of rush to tie things up. But I thought this was really well paced. So it's called The Double, and you can find it on Viki.
Very cool.
If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us, cordkillers@gmail.com. And when you do, an angel gets its wings.
Yeah. Are you referring to the bell alert of the emails coming in?
Yeah, probably. I also just couldn't think of a way to toss to your thing that you say in the middle of the show.
Oh, you mean the part where I tell everybody that April 5th is going to be the Founders Day picnic? Unfortunately, Tom has other engagements, but you know who we do have? We do have Matt Donnelly and Paul Mattingly, who are going to do a full improv comedy show. We do have Jomo and the Possum Posse. We are going to be doing the combined Great Night and Ice Cream Social shows. We're going to be having a goat beauty contest. That's right.
What?
Yes. If you get the goat tier, then you get a goat, and then you get to cheer for your goat in the goat beauty contest.
And they're the goat.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's dual layers, Tom. That's just how clever. Yeah. But most importantly, we're going to be playing picnic games, and it's going to be just an absolute blast. That's coming up April 5th. If you are within driving distance, $100 covers food. We'll also do a cookout, I think, this year. We haven't done a cookout before, but we'll actually fire up the gigantic grill for everyone. And if price is what's holding you back, drop me an email, brian@schwood.com, and we'll see what we could do. Right now, we have enough tickets sold that everything is definitely on track, and now we're just polishing it up. But we do have, because I promised less, I didn't promise an eclipse. I never promised you an eclipse every year, to be clear. The sun and the moon already independently are very inflexible schedules, and getting them both booked at the same time was very difficult. But we do have enough open spots that I want to get us somewhere between 100 and Dunbar's number for attendees.
I think you should go with the tactic of saying, look, last year the sun went out right in the middle of everything. I apologize. I promise that won't happen this year.
I gave you all rain check vouchers.
I wish I could be there. I have a family thing that just makes it logistically almost impossible to be there. So I want every one of you to go attend and at some point stand up and say, I am Tom Merritt, so that in some way I can be there, please.
Excellent.
Let's move on to Scan the Horizon.
Send a scanning to avoid.
Scanning the horizon!
YouTube officially announced its less expensive Premium Light tier, which offers fewer ads. Most videos are ad-free. It is only $8 a month versus the $14 a month you pay for the regular YouTube Premium. And for that discount, you still get ads on music content. So if there's a music video, obviously that's music content, but also like content made by musicians for their own channel, stuff like that. YouTube Premium Lite does not give you downloads, does not give you background play, and does not come with access to YouTube Music. All of that is reserved for the more expensive premium tier. Premium Lite has been tested in Australia, Germany, and Thailand, so it's now going to roll out widely there, as well as adding the US, with more markets to be added in the coming months.
Yeah, we speculated heavily on the behind the scenes as to why that deal is the way it is. But I guess we'll find out, and we'll see whether or not this works.
Warner Brothers Home Entertainment announced that some DVDs made between 2006 and 2008 have become unplayable, despite the fact that DVDs usually are playable for at least 30 years, up to 100 years in a lot of cases. But they're doing right by you, even though this is from like back when George W. Bush was president. You can still get a replacement. Warner Brothers says where possible, the defective discs have been replaced with the same title. However, as some of the affected titles are no longer in print or rights have expired, consumers have been offered an exchange for a title of like value. Consumers with affected products can contact customer support at whv@wbd.com. I like that they're doing this. They don't have to do this. They could just be like, man, sorry, maybe partial refund or something, but going to the extent of trying to replace this.
This definitely is a man bites dog story. It's unexpected, like headline, big media conglomerate does right by customer.
Does the right
and we're
thing.
Like, what?
Yeah, they think these all came from one plant in Pennsylvania, so the implication is that plant like cheaped out on some materials or something.
And it could be that they maybe internally were compensated, so they're kind of paying it forward.
Yeah, maybe.
Like to be honest, that's the kind of thing. Like if I found out with my little online store, scamstuff.com, gear for the modern rogue, if I found out that a batch of pens were not up to snuff, but they had already been shipped, then I would get right with the manufacturer, and I probably would keep a tally of like, okay, this get right, I'm going to be the steward of this, but this is budgeted to take care of
and then
instantly anybody who has a problem with the deliverable.
Netflix CFO Spencer Newman said the company expects to spend around $18 billion on content in 2025. So if you've been hearing a lot about everybody cutting back on content, Netflix is saying they plan to spend 11% more on content this year. And he said, we're not anywhere near a ceiling. He said the company accounts for less than 10% of total TV viewing, so there's still room to grow. Netflix will not be satisfied until they have 100% of all the viewing.
I mean, I guess Xeno's Arrow, I mean, all it's going to take is all the energy in the known universe.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, yes, increasing the spending on content for Netflix makes sense. That is not super surprising. Saying, our company accounts for less than 10% of total TV viewing in the world, can sound, if you don't think about it, like, oh, it's only 10%. There's room to grow. That's a lot of viewing. That's a lot of viewing that Netflix has in the world.
Yeah. Think
Wait
about
for
the
my
number
documentary about the last man who subscribes.
That's right. That's right. Amazon is actively testing AI-aided dubbing of Amazon Prime Video content. They say this is a hybrid approach. Translations would be made in collaboration with local professionals, so people who actually speak the language, kind of double check to make sure the AI is doing it right. The test starts with English and Latin American Spanish on 12 licensed movies and series, including El Cid, La Leyenda, Mi Mama Laura, and Long Lost.
This is a really good example of, in general, when it comes to AI, a lot of people, many people have just made up their mind one way or the other where they're at on the issue. What I think is going to happen is that the real differentiator on how we feel about AI-assisted anything is one question. Does it bring me closer to another human being or not? If it is bringing me closer to a dead, soulless robot fantasy of something, then no, we don't approve of that. But in this case, if a dub, let's say there's a famous actor or whatever, and you want to see it in your, or let's say I'm watching some programming on Viki or what have you. All things being equal, if I'm hearing English dubbed onto it, I'd prefer that English be the original voice of the original actor. So in that case, even though the original actor didn't say any of these lines, the AI would be bringing me closer to the actual human being and closer to the authentic art that they bring to this particular project.
Yeah, we had an allergic reaction the other day when Prime Video automatically assumed we wanted the English dub of a Korean show, which not only did we not, because we're trying to learn Korean and we want to practice, but also the voices were just wrong. I was like, no, that's not what Jisoo sounds like. Please stop that. Give me back the real voice.
I think as the large language model stuff gets bigger and bigger, in particularly localization, we're also going to get generational localization where I can subscribe to the Gen X subtitling or captioning versus the Gen Z.
I mean, that does sound almost comical, but that's 100% right. And to be honest, I realized this the other day. We're already seeing that. And I can't believe it was under our nose the entire time. Like I had portrayed for the last couple of years the idea of a dialect translator or a generational dialect translator, like take all my Gen X metaphors and replace them with Gen Z metaphors, etc. Like that was a hilarious trope of an idea. And then it struck me, oh wait, no, that's literally what the NFL has been pioneering for the last 5 years, is a complete remapping of the same game, just approachable to a different age demographic.
Yeah. So what you're saying is when you crash out, you need to go California sober.
See, we don't even speak the same language, man.
We don't even speak the same language anymore, man. A widespread bug in Chromecast audio and version 2 Chromecasts, not version 1, is causing many users to get an error message that they are dealing with an untrusted device, and this could be caused by outdated firmware. Chromecast 3rd Gen and newer appear to be unaffected. Google has not made any end-of-life announcements about these devices, and in fact, says they are working on a fix. But as of our recording on Tuesday, this has been going on all weekend, and I don't think a fix has come yet. I will double check here in a second, but pretty bad outage.
Is this the universe balancing itself? Like on one corner of the internet universe, Warner Brothers does right by the customer, so that so Chromecast has to be indifferent to a major outage.
I mean, they say they're working on a fix, so I don't know that they're indifferent, but it's still down. It's taking them a long time to do that fix. Finally, Roku is continuing its relationship with Philips. So I know Roku is selling TVs under its own brand, but this is an indication that they still plan to do partnerships. The Philips OLED Roku TV is available starting at $1,299. Let's move on to the chatter.
You've got mail.
Gentlemen, this is another Civil War reference. Dearest Brian, when you were searching for a new full experience on this week's After Talk, it seemed that Tom had forgotten the trick I sent in not quite a year ago for finding the highest and lowest rated episodes of a show on IMDb. So here it is again, Tom. He didn't write that part. Click on the rating on the main series page to be taken to a page containing a color-coded table of all the episodes' ratings in series order. Clicking on an episode's rating will then take you to the episode page. Also, a suggestion for the Killies this year. How about naming the fullest experience of the year and optionally the least full experience? Keep on keeping on, Mike in Mississippi.
That's pretty good. I like that. I mean, I guess we're getting through. What's funny is I almost had to do the math, Tom, on how many full experiences we're able to do per year. And I'm like, dummy, there's 4 of them. There's 4 weeks in a month. Pretty sure we get through 12 of them every year.
Around 12. Yeah, probably. So yeah, that's a great idea. And Mike, thank you again for reminding me of that trick. I will remember. I will try to remember that in the future. I actually can't make any promises, but I'll do my best. And it's not your fault if I don't. Jeremy writes, I swear I'm not a one-joke person. I sent one similar to this about the Netflix theme park, but when I heard about the Netflix restaurant residency, I immediately thought, Netflix and grill.
This is me. This is fully of me doing a standing ovation clap.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Finally, jumping forward to the most recent After Talk, why not put Community through the full experience? It has a diverse cast, was creative with the medium in many ways that few shows have been. I believe it would also get a good sample of the run, as episodes from the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 6th seasons would be in the
That
full
does
experience.
sound pretty good.
Make a note of that. Community. That's not what we're doing next, but that might be a good follow-up to The Outer Limits, which is what we're doing next. TJ Asher says, I always listen to Cordkillers on Friday. No specific time, just sometime on Friday. It's my treat to myself for making it through the week. It's also the only podcast I listen to at 1x speed because I want it to last just that little bit longer.
That is maybe one of the deepest compliments I've ever been given.
Right?
That's incredible.
That is crazy, TJ. Keep making shows.
It took me a second. I was like, are you okay, Tom?
I'll keep paying for them. Thank you, TJ. I did my best. Norm writes, hey all, I had started an email about audio inconsistencies across my streaming services, but really the main outlier is Prime Video. I do almost all of my streaming on my relatively new Samsung TV. YouTube videos, normal volume, around 35 to 40. Hulu, about 35 to 40, but commercials go lower. Disney Plus, about 40 to 45, no commercials. Then the real outlier, Prime Video. Ads much louder than the show. 35 to 40 is loud for the shows, but the commercials shoot up in volume even at the same number. For audio, I use the SiriusXM and Prime Audio apps on the TV, and that audio is consistent between them. To complicate things, I'll Bluetooth into my TV with my phone to play audio from those same apps, and the volume is lower, but still plenty loud. So overall, I think the audio isn't as much of a problem as I would have thought.
Yeah, I think that jumping from device to device and from app to app, it's interesting because in the old days of, broadcast and cable television, you had a reasonable expectation that flipping from channel to channel, you'd have roughly the same sound levels. Whereas I just don't from app to app. It's like, okay, I'm in this app. What is a comfortable level?
Yeah. Well, Andy Beach, thank you so much for joining us. Remind people once again where they can get your Substack and anything else you got going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you guys for having me on. It's always fun to come in and talk. And if anybody wants to follow my shenanigans, please go over to Substack. I'm abeach, ABEACH at .substack.com.
A beach.
A beach.
That's all you got. Yeah, just remember that. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We are live at twitch.tv/Night Attack Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. That's right. It's Tuesdays now. I reckon we'll talk to you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.